You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm starting us off this week with a biological mystery story that is at least 2,400 years old.
What?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
All
right, I'm intrigued. Let's go.
Aristotle wrote about this fish.
Whoa. Oh, it's a fish?
It's a fish. And was confounded by the fact that it seemed to have no reproductive organs, was never observed to mate, and was never seen to hatch from eggs.
Wait. I think I know about this. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, it's also found in all kinds of freshwater environments, including ones where it would seem a fish has no business, like ephemeral ponds, that is ponds that disappear for part of the year, and bodies of water that are cut off from any river. Aristotle thought that they were, quote unquote, born of earthworms and spontaneously generated from wet soil.
Okay.
He was wrong. Just headline.
Really? Was he?
Spoiler.
But I can, knowing already what you're talking about, I can see why someone would think that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly, you can see why someone would think this. I'm going to talk about it. I am talking about eels.
Eels, yes.
I love eels.
Nice. I can't believe it took to episode 60 to get to eels.
I know.
No.
Here
I
we
talked about
are.
moray eels.
It's true.
But
it's true. You did. These are
Different
freshwater eels.
Type of
Different
eels.
type,
Yeah.
But this was actually one where I was like, I can't believe nobody's done this yet. And this is one where I'm genuinely a little afraid that it's going to be that time when two of us come with the same topic.
Mm-hmm.
But no. So there are two closely related species that I'm going to talk about, the European eel and the American eel.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the European eel was the one that Aristotle was talking about, but they have very similar life histories. So it turns out there are various reasons that the eel was so mysterious, and we know about them now. So it undergoes metamorphosis, and so the different life stages seem like different types of animals.
So cool, yeah. I know. Keep going.
Rachel's really excited, folks.
I'm withholding
excited
so much. I'm just go.
It's migratory, so it's born in the sea. It spends the rest of its life in freshwater, and then it returns to the sea to mate and die. It does not develop its reproductive organs until its final migration. And it can travel overland when necessary and hibernate in mud until awakened by water coming back into its habitat.
That's insane.
So amazing.
And there's other cool stuff, but mainly I want to talk about how people figured out that the eel is the eel and where it comes from. So many people over many centuries gradually put the pieces together. And so I am going to sum up their knowledge in what we know now about the weird life cycle of these eels. So when
thousands of years of knowledge coming at us.
Yes. More like 300, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we already learned about Aristotle's knowledge. Well, he tried.
Right.
Well, okay, fair enough.
So when an eel hatches, it is a tiny transparent larva that's about 2 inches long, or maybe even a little smaller. It's completely see-through and flattened laterally, so side to side. So it looks a bit like a see-through leaf. And it's called a leptocephalus. And these can drift on the ocean currents then toward the shores of North America and the Caribbean, or toward Europe, depending on which species it is. And then by the time they reach the inlets of rivers, they have become more eel-like in shape, still only a few inches long, and they're still transparent. And they're called a glass eel at that point.
Yes.
So people knew about glass eels, but they didn't know they were connected to the next stage, which is there's a kind of a smaller version of an adult eel called an elver. So as they start to swim up the river, they're called an elver. And then as they grow into kind of the mature eels that hang around in fresh water, they are known as yellow eels because they're kind of a yellowish brown color. And these were the ones that were most familiar to inland people and were very frequently eaten.
Right.
Okay, so then after spending approximately 5 to 20 or sometimes longer years in the freshwater, due to some signal that is
longer than I thought it would be. Okay.
Yeah, they're very long-lived fish. They still don't know what the signal is that causes an eel to metamorphose into its final stage, but there's some signal. They change a final time into silver eels so that their color changes again. They lose their stomachs and travel on their fat reserves.
Oh, no.
And their reproductive organs then develop, finally.
Okay.
Right. I got good news and I got bad news.
Yeah.
On the plus side, you get to go on a trip. On the downside, you don't get any food.
Yeah. So then they migrate back to the place that they were born.
Okay.
But where is that place?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Rachel knows.
I do.
Kirk knows.
I know.
Okay, well, it was very difficult to
figure
out.
That was a big mystery.
It was
very difficult to figure out. And, the silver eels would leave, the glass eels would come back. How do you track a tiny fish in a small ocean? And most of our knowledge on this comes thanks to an early 20th century Danish biologist named Johannes Schmidt. And that's how I say it in German. I don't know how the Danes say it.
I'm pretty sure the Danish say it very similar as a Danish person. Not that that means anything.
Thank you, Rachel. So starting in 1904, he sailed out first into the Mediterranean, which is where they initially thought the eels went, and then into the Atlantic. And he just over and over again would cast nets into the water, haul them up, and see if he could find eel larvae. And he would record the size and location of all the larvae he found. And he contracted with like commercial trawlers to do this for him as well, just year after year. And finally, by 1920, he tracked down the tiniest larvae of all, newly hatched, teeny tiny, cute baby eels in the Sargasso Sea.
Oh. Yeah.
So the Sargasso Sea is unlike all other seas in that it's not bounded by any land masses. It's just a part of the Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty far east of the southeastern United States. But it's bounded by ocean currents. It's a gyre, so there are currents that sort of swirl around it on all sides, and it's kind of, you can think of it as a bit of a still spot in the ocean. And there's a particular kind of seaweed called sargassum that grows there, and it provides cover for different life forms, including baby eels. So since 1920, the Sargasso Sea has been believed to be the spawning and hatching grounds of the Atlantic eels. But here's the thing. In spite of a lot of biologists trying very hard using modern tracking and sampling methods, no one has ever seen a mature eel in the Sargasso Sea, nor found an eel egg there, or anywhere else.
Right. Sounds like so frustrating.
You're like, okay, pretty sure it's over here, but I can't prove it.
And point of clarification, it's believed that eels from both Europe and North America both go to the
Correct.
Sea, right?
Yeah, and actually, as a side note, for a while in the kind of mid to late 20th century, there were some scientists who actually believed that they were the same species that just had some like body variations based on the conditions that they were maturing in.
Oh, sure.
But then once they did genetic analysis, they figured that they are actually separate species.
Okay, cool.
But they did diverge not that long ago, evolutionarily speaking.
Sure.
But there is still this big eel mystery, which is it's frustrating, but it's also just so cool that there's this this mystery out there.
It's a big ocean.
It is a big ocean. And like it's have they been able to like follow the silver eels at all, or no?
Yeah, so there have been tracking studies. And what I want to talk about next actually is somewhat related to that. So I read a very interesting paper that was published on October 6th, 2020 by Yulin K. Cheng and colleagues. It was in Nature's peer-reviewed open access journal called Scientific Reports. At any rate, it's called New Clues on the Atlantic Eel's Spawning Behavior and Area, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge Hypothesis.
Interesting.
So there's a lot in the paper.
Oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Overall, the paper suggests that the Sargasso Sea may not be the main or the only spawning ground for the eels.
Oh.
Huh.
So it kind of takes its point of comparison as the Japanese eel, which is it's a fairly similar species in its life cycle, and it was first thought to breed much closer to Japan, but they went through a similar process of tracking down the larvae in the Pacific Ocean, and the spawning grounds were eventually discovered and confirmed to be along an oceanic ridge in the Western Pacific that was much farther than they initially thought. And the kind of, you wonder, like, it's just a point in the ocean. It's not the Sargasso Sea. How does the eel navigate there? Well, they think that the eels, because they come up to the surface at night and they go down during the day, and so they can sense different chemicals in the water column that could come up from oceanic ridges or different temperature changes. And then so that's the north-south marker, and then the east-west marker is a salinity gradient.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
For these Japanese eels. So their hypothesis is that for the Atlantic eels, there is a different spawning location that's at the mid-Atlantic ridge, where the two plates separate, and a salinity or temperature gradient for those two coordinates.
Let's get a boat.
Yeah, so they have a couple of pieces of evidence this is based on. One of them was that based on tracking of actual silver eels, the silver eels don't go the direct route that you would assume if they were just kind of heading straight to the Sargasso Sea. They all rendezvous at the Azores, which are a group of islands along the mid-Atlantic ridge at about the latitude of southern Portugal.
Okay.
And then they kind of can't, it seems like, I don't think they were able to track them after that.
Huh.
So these researchers think that they use that as a starting point, and then they follow the ridge to the point where the salinity's at the right, or temperature at the right place.
Okay.
But then they used computer, and there were some other pieces of evidence too, but then they used computer modeling to release virtual larvae from the Sargasso Sea and from this proposed new location. And they found that based on where the virtual larvae drifted to on the virtual ocean currents, the ones that were released from this mid-Atlantic ridge location actually better matched up with the actual locations of real eel larvae than if they released the virtual larvae from the Sargasso Sea location, if you're following me.
Huh.
Yeah, totally following. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, like, obviously there's a lot of work that would have to be done to determine if this is in fact true. You know, they'd have to actually send research vessels out to this area that's further east and further, I think maybe a little bit further south of the Sargasso Sea. But it's a really intriguing idea, and you know, if true, would partly explain why nobody's found the adult eels or the eggs.
Right, maybe they're kind of going through the Sargasso Sea on their way elsewhere or something. That's cool.
Maybe
I think they were not suggesting that there's no spawning in the Sargasso Sea because of the size of the larvae that they found there are so small that they think they have to have just hatched.
Okay, cool.
But still.
I mean, it's almost more surprising if they only hatch in one specific spot versus having several.
And they also think that the American eels and this European eels may have slightly different spawning locations, as you might expect.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the European eel is critically endangered, and the American eel is endangered. No one knows all the reasons, but overfishing, pollution in the Sargasso Sea, also in pollution in freshwater, and a lot of dams built on their rivers all contribute.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn dams.
Yeah. And once again, I end my section on a down note, but thank you. And when we come back from the break, we're going to have Kirk.
Strange by Nature podcast is brought to you by listeners like you who have joined the Society of Strange, our membership group on over at patreon.com/strangebynature. Society of Strange members can join at one of 3 different membership levels and help support the show and also get some fun stuff like water bottle stickers or access to super secret content. So thank you to those who have joined already to help make this podcast possible. If you haven't joined yet, we'll see you soon over at the Society of Strange at patreon.com/strangebynature. See you soon. All right, so my topic this week is strange, but you have to wait until the very end for the truly strangest part. I'm taking us on a journey through time. We're headed back to the 1840s.
Okay, so not as far back as 2,400 years ago. Got it.
No.
Not as far back as some of the other journeys you've taken us on.
That's very much true.
Yeah.
This was, if you think about it, like, so just to kind of place us in time here in North America, we had the Mexican-American War. California became a state. By the end of the decade, we had the gold rush in California. This is the decade where the saxophone was created, apparently.
Oh,
okay.
It's kind of cool.
Huh.
More recent than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Karl Marx was writing his Communist Manifesto. Napoleon Bonaparte was the first president of France. My ancestors were poor goat farmers in Norway and Sweden. And down in Rachel's favorite continent, Australia, something strange is being seen for the very first time.
Okay.
And that something was camels.
Oh.
Well, I'm sorry. Whoa. Camels in Australia.
Camels. Right. Doesn't sound right, does it?
Why are camels in Australia? Were they brought
that's
there?
a great question. They were brought there, and there are, if you look online, conflicting reports on where these camels came from. So one source I looked at said that they were imported from India, while the official government website of the Northern Territories of Australia claims they were brought from the Canary Islands, which seems bizarre and strange in and of itself. So I did some digging on this, and apparently the camels that are in Australia right now, and there are camels in Australia to this day, are mostly from the Middle East, India, and Afghanistan.
Okay.
And the very first camel, though, was part of a shipment of 3 that did come from the Canary Islands. And for those of you who don't know where that is, they're a little more than about 60 miles off the coast of Morocco on the western side of Africa out in the Atlantic Ocean. So probably the least convenient spot you can possibly imagine to ship camels to Australia from.
That's about as far away to find camels to bring them to Australia.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's the longest
they must have
distance you could have
been
made.
brought to the Canary Islands themselves at some point.
I'm not sure on the history of camels in the Canary Islands, but we'll just say #British and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, predictably, only one of them survived the trip, although predictably I would have thought none of them would have made it. But one of them did survive. His name was Henry. Or no, not Henry, sorry, it's Harry. His name was Harry.
Harry the camel.
Harry the camel. Yeah, it's great. Harry holds another distinction besides being the first camel ever in Australia. He's also known primarily for the fact that he shot his owner and rider.
Hold on, what?
How?
Well, maybe this is a little bit of hyperbole, but John Ainsworth Horrocks was an explorer in Australia, and he was, thought it was really great to use these camels to do exploring, which is why, why they wanted to bring camels to Australia in the first place.
They're good in the outback, I assume.
Yeah, they're very, very well adapted to Australia, even though they're not from there. And apparently, John Horrocks was trying to shoot a bird one day, and his camel Harry moved and somehow horribly caused Horrocks' gun to go off, and the shot blew off several of his fingers
Ooh.
and an entire row of teeth.
Oh.
Where was the gun pointing?
I think he was like cleaning it or
Jostled
loading it or
his
something
elbow.
like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and now he did end up dying 23 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And he requested that Harry the camel be shot, which I think is pretty petty. By the
Right?
way.
That's
Yeah.
so
If you're
petty.
it's
not the camel's fault.
Apparently the camel was. So it's clear that the camels there today did not come from Harry. Other camels were eventually imported. It's estimated that there were like thousands that were imported into the country,
Mm-hmm.
because they thought they would be good for exploring the continent. And there were breeding programs set up as well to purposely raise and maintain these for transportation. It was quite a big industry.
Yeah.
But all things, come to an end, and the automobile being
The
created
automobile. Yeah.
and brought in, and other types of mechanized transportation really brought the whole camel breeding and raising to an end in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those breeders, when they were done, just sort of let them go and turn them loose into the wild. So we now have feral camels out there wandering around, and they're doing very well. So if we flash forward to modern times, camels have gone feral. By 2008, there were an estimated 1 million wild camels in Australia.
That's a lot of
And
camels.
the government decided to spend a whopping 19 million Australian dollars to try to reduce the population. For reference, that's a little bit less than 14 million US dollars. And the 1 million number, you see it thrown around, but it may actually be kind of high, because I know by the time they got around to actually organizing and carrying out this control, it was 2013. And they did like another survey and estimate, and it came up with a number of 600,000 camels. And they were able to bring that population down through some like hunting programs and some roundups and whatnot. And they estimated they got the population down to about 300,000 that are still out there.
Okay.
But it's an ongoing struggle, because if left unchecked, the population, they're breeding out there, and it goes up by about 10% per year.
Wow.
Right? So
yeah.
It's pretty amazing. On the whole, camels are seen as a pretty destructive force in the wilds of Australia. There are a couple things that maybe they kind of help with, but they are often destructive. One fascinating fact is that they can smell water from up to 5 kilometers away.
Wow.
And they will seek it out, and they've known to be pretty destructive when trying to get to that water, whether it be like a natural source of water that they then foul up, or even like just literally destroying people's property to get at water. And so they can cause quite a problem, and also a real problem for the environment. They found that like they will eat 80% of the plant varieties present. That doesn't mean they'll eat 80, like denude the land by 80%, but 80% of the species that they could eat are edible to the camel. So yikes. Now,
that's a
if
lot.
you remember, I mentioned the population goes up by 10% per year. Well, currently there's no budget to keep culling them on a large scale. And there's some little small roundups and stuff that happen, but nothing on big level. So a 10% increase per year, I believe, means the population will then double every 10 years or so. And so since the big cull was in 2013, if you kind of do the math, that means like
we're almost there.
We're almost basically back to that 600,000 number we started with. So yikes. Now, there's lots of strange parts to this story and directions I could go, but the thing that caught my eye, and I really wanted to share with you, that was the especially strange thing with this, was a relatively recent proposal for how to get the money to control the population.
Okay.
And the solution proposed was to sell carbon offsets.
What?
Okay.
Right.
To get rid of camels.
Here's the deal, right? Every camel not only causes ecological degradation, but also produces methane in the form of burps and farts.
Right, because it's a ruminant.
Yeah, it's a ruminant, right? And so each camel produces about 100 pounds of methane per year. Now, you'll notice, though, that I said carbon credits or carbon offsets, not methane credits. But methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
Right.
100 pounds of methane is the same as 2,500 pounds of CO2. So I did a little math on this. A camel can live up to 50 years. So culling one camel could save the equivalent over its lifetime of 125,000 pounds of CO2 from the atmosphere.
Wow.
Nice.
Which is impressive. So a company called Northwest Carbon has proposed that they will shoot camels from a helicopter and then sell the meat for pet food. And the saved carbon, or the equivalent in methane, could then be sold or traded on the open market as carbon offsets and carbon credits. So it's a completely bizarre idea.
Yeah.
But may actually be an interesting way to fund the control of feral camels and help reduce global warming at the same time.
That's kind of brilliant.
It's so weird. I actually, when I first thought of doing this episode, I was like, well, maybe I could do one on unique carbon offsets. Like, this is like the weirdest one, but maybe there's other weird ideas out there. There's nothing. Everything is very like, we're gonna plant trees. We're gonna, this is like, let's shoot camels. So it's like, it's completely bizarre and strange, and I knew it had to make it onto the show.
That's a bizarre
some of the
way to go,
information I got for this, by the way, I want to give shout out, was there was an article on Live Science that had some numbers, things I was looking at. Also, the Northwest Territories website of the government of Australia, and then just some general numbers and things I got from good old Wikipedia. So thank you to all those sources, and that's the strange corner of the earth I have for you this week.
All right,
Cool.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to hear I want to hear what Rachel's got. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm excited.
We'll be back. We'll be back in a couple seconds. Here we go.
Imagine you are a German botanist in 1902, and you make a discovery in Australia.
Oh, there it is.
What a surprise.
Oh, I can't believe that you would talk about Australia on the show.
Who would have guessed? So you send it back to the Berlin herbarium, but no one seemed to really take notice of your discovery. The flower itself is pretty simple. It's like a cream rose color. It's not really big. It's pretty small. So your discovery kind of goes unnoticed. And then, World War II happens, so that sample is destroyed.
Oh.
Yeah. So now we fast forward to the 1970s, era of disco.
There we go.
And you are a farmer in Queensland, Australia. And you wake up one morning and several of your cows are dead.
Oh, no. This is alarming.
Oh, no.
It wasn't
very
a camel,
alarming.
was it?
It was not a camel. There doesn't seem to be any attack or predator signs or anything. The cows look totally fine. They're just dead. So you think someone poisoned your cows, so you call the police. And they called the government vet, because they have a vet with the government, who does an autopsy.
Makes sense.
And the vet discovers this weird fruit, or which is really more like a large seed. It's about the size of a human fist. It's about 3.1 inches in diameter, or 8 centimeters in diameter. So it's a large
a big
seed. Yeah.
Like bigger than an avocado pit.
Which is very strange, because there's not really any flowering plants or seeds that are known to produce a seed that large in Australia at all. So you're like, what?
Oh.
That would be very weird.
It'd be very weird. And it seems you have accidentally discovered a brand new species of tree.
What?
Wait, yeah, what?
So what happened was this farmer, or this what happened?
Rancher.
This cattle farmer, it was he rediscovered that same the flower that the botanist, his name was
I think technically the cow rediscovered
Deals.
it.
Technically the cow.
Technically,
discovered
I'm
it.
sure the indigenous Australians knew about it for many
That as
thousands
well.
of
Yes,
years.
that as well. Yes. So discovered in Western scientists or Western science. So it was a German botanist named Ludwig Dels. And then the government veterinarian Doug Clade, he sent the seeds and everything to a botanist, Stan Blake, and they were like, this was described by Ludwig Dels, but we've never seen a sample of these or anything like that. So what is going on? And how did it kill these cows dead? Because these seeds were completely whole. They weren't really chewed or anything like that. And they found out that these seeds of this plant were what caused the cows to drop dead. They have a very special poison on them.
Ooh, okay.
To the point
On
where
them, not
it has,
in them.
well, it's in them
Or
as
both.
well. It's a very, very toxic seed. It produces a neurotoxin, where it quite literally it causes seizures and convulsions and paralysis.
Oh my gosh.
wow.
Because it prevents the nerves from being able to talk to each other, more or less.
Wow.
And it kills whatever eats it. So part of the reason why in Western science this particular plant, which I am saving the name for a reason,
Okay.
part of the reason why it kind of it really wasn't known in Western science is the tree that it comes from is nothing really special. It looks pretty generic. It has simple leaves. They remind me a lot of avocado leaves, actually. They are an evergreen because they are found in a more they are a rainforest species of sorts. But it's just not that it's not that special looking at all. So what is this? Why am I talking about it today? So other than having this insanely toxic seed, they are also one of the oldest flowering plants in the world.
Oh, wow.
In the
Really?
world. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Like how old are we talking here?
According to Australian Geographic, the oldest known fossils of this tree date back 120 million years.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but I also saw some sources saying back to 88 million years. It's still pretty old.
Gotcha.
And they really are only found now they're really only found in one little area of Australia. They're not really found anywhere else. And it's kind of, it's really nothing special looking other than the fact that it's really old. However, I want to also say it's very fun, beautiful, common name, as well as its scientific name.
It has a beautiful common name?
So the scientific name is Idiospermum australensis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also known as the ribbon tree, the green dinosaur, and the idiot fruit tree.
Okay.
Is that because you'd be an idiot to eat it, or what?
I mean, yes, you would be, but it's actually a play on its scientific name of Idiospermum australis.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the fact that it's just it's a very, very toxic plant. Like nothing eats it. The way that it disperses its seeds is they literally use gravity and roll down the mountainside. There are some little, I think it's what was it? I think it was oh my goodness. Oh yeah. There was like a kangaroo rat that will quite literally bury the seeds, but they don't eat them.
Why? Is it to drive off parasites from their burrows or something?
Good question. No idea.
Okay.
Yeah, to go to the trouble to bury it. It's like, oh, this is bad, bury this. That is wild.
It is very, very wild. And they just, because they have some insects that pollinate, obviously, with like small beetles that do it. But
Sure.
When it comes to their dispersal, like they really don't get eaten, because if they do, they get severely poisoned. The musky kangaroo rat will disperse them and bury, but they don't really eat them. Usually when an animal like disperses a seed or whatever, it's to eat them.
Right.
But these guys don't.
Well, that's usually the function of a fruit often is to attract animals to get them to eat it, so they will spread it for you and do things like eat it or bury it for later. And it's just bizarre that you would have something that goes to the trouble of making this thing and then being like, nope, everyone stay away. Like, is it mostly just a seed, or is there any fleshy fruit around it, or is it just basically a big seed that falls down?
So the name, the fruit part is kind of not super true because it is mostly a seed, because what also kind of makes it strange is what fleshy part that is there actually decays while it's still attached to the tree itself.
So like I said, they're relying on it's very round seed that's relying on gravity to spread rather than being a fruit that attracts animals.
Yes.
Gotcha. That makes more sense.
It has been suggested that they could have been dispersed by a now extinct large marsupial that
right,
kind of like the avocado.
Kind of like the avocado, but a marsupial and Australia. Exactly. But we don't know for sure, obviously.
Wow.
Yeah, I really just wanted to talk about the idiot fruit tree. That's all.
You just saw that it was called idiot tree, and you were like, "Oh, this one's for me."
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
I mean, they're an evergreen, and they're not tall. They're not really anything special. They have super toxic fruits. I say with quotations on a podcast. And they're very old, and those things are really cool. But I also really wanted to just talk about an idiot fruit tree.
Wow. Very cool. Thanks for bringing that.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, everybody, for listening today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.